Afterwards, he commanded me to move him from the chair to the bed. So I took him and I went with him. And he, the Rebbe, his head and most of his body was leaning on me. And his feet were just barely touching the ground. And he was carrying himself on me until I brought him to the bed, which wasn't far from the chair. When I brought him to the bed, I held him, the bati, and I picked him up, and as if he carried him, put him onto the bed. And he said to me, slowly, B'loshen Ashkenaz in Yiddish, pavala, slowly. That's what I did, and I put him on the bed very, very slowly and gently. And it was wonder in my eye that he had to caution me about this. And he said, I am very heavy now. And therefore I warned you about this. And Reb Nosson writes a parenthesis. A person, right before he passes away, his body gets heavy because his chiyus goes away from him. And this was everything that he was meramis to me. He's very close to his Histalkus, to his death. And I didn't hear it at all. And he lied on the bed. While he was lying on the bed, he looked at me all the time. And I merited to take care of him alone, and to give him everything he needed. Then I said to him, Rebbe, take something to make yourself feel good. Hey, Shiv, he answered me, what are you going to give me? So I told him, I'm going to give you a cup of tea. And he answered, give it to me with the yellow part of the egg. They would give him hot tea with the egg yolk inside, and that would help him with his tuberculosis. That's what I did. I cooked up the water and the tea with the yolk, and the sugar, and I gave it to him. And he told me to give him a little bit of water, and he washed his hands, and he took the tea, that it's very hot. Because he was careful not to drink hot liquids, so it shouldn't awaken the blood of his coffee. A few days already before he was nostalgic, the blood stopped coming out from his coffee. And I took the tea, I took it from one glass to the other glass in order to cool it down. And then I gave it to him. And when I gave it to him again, he said, it's still hot. So I cooled it down again. And he said, it's still hot. It happened like 3 or 4 times. When I made it cool enough according to his will, he took it, and he made a bracha, and he drank it. And then I stood in front of him until it got daylight. And I got simcha and some chiyus and energy, the fact that I merited to be mishamishim. Because not every day was I able to be mishamishim. Because his ratzon was that his mishar should take care of him. Sporadic times I was able to take care of him a little bit. And now I merited to be able to take care of him for a few hours straight. In this time, so I was besimcha. I had no idea, no inkling that would be the last day of the Rebbe's life, and that Hashem would be taking him away. I thought that he's going to live longer. When it got daylight, his then his mishars got up, his family members, and they all got up to take care of him. So I went to the mikveh to prepare myself for davening. That was on Tuesday, which was the 4th day of Sukkot, like today. When I came back from the mikveh, I went into his room and I found him lying on his bed. Not lying, sitting on his bed. He was sitting, not lying. And he was wrapped in his talis and his spal, and he's davening. Then he took the lulav and esrog and the arba minim, he held them in his hands while he was wrapped in his talis. The Yoishem Amitose, and he was sitting on his bed. And the Arizah was open on his lap. The Gomar Halal Ma'aba Minim, he finished Halal with the 4 minim, and he said Aishanas loudly, according to his level. Everyone heard him. Praised is the eyes that merited to see him at this moment, to hear his voice while he was holding the Abba Minim and he would say Halal Aishanas on the last day of his life, his holy life. And we finished davening B'tzibur in the next room, next door to his room. We always davened there B'tzibur. And everybody davened there in that room. Achar Tefillin is davened. I had to pass his room for something I needed, and I saw him looking at me. I spoke to his brother Rabbi Chil. I fell down in my das, and I started thinking maybe he will pass away. And he told Rabbi Chil, give me chizik. But chizik, and he gave me chizik, and his chazakti, and I got chizik b'dati. I shouldn't think about the fact that he's going to pass away. It was an isser, the halis machshavas. It was forbidden to even have this thought on our heart. Then I went out. And I went to the Achsani that I was staying. I ate. But they said the Balbais wasn't there. I waited for him. And while I was waiting for him, I went to sleep before I ate. I was very ozgemitchet. I was very more than tired. I was very, weary, and I couldn't sleep. I was also writing Torah at the time that I needed to fix something. Then the Balabais came and I ate with him. I really wanted to go to sleep because I didn't sleep since Chatzos and I was tired. I was in pain. I was worried what's going on by the Rebbe. I said to myself, it's impossible to go without sleep. And if I don't sleep now, I'm going to have to sleep later. And who knows what will be later. I wanted to sleep there in the Rebbe's house. These were all my thoughts, but the eights of the Eivish, that's what happened. And Hashem had compassion, tremendous compassion on me. That even though the emes says it's not possible to go without sleep, I'm going to go to the Rebbe's house to sleep there. And I came to his house, I went into his room, and there was a big noise, and I saw him sitting at his chair. And I saw that his soul and his energy was leaving him. And he couldn't sit anymore on the chair. And he almost died. And the people are standing around him. And they were giving all different types of smell for him to smell that would give him chiyus. And the Eibishter made with Trovitz. That one of our people, Chassidim and Talmidim of the Rebbe from Trovitz came. And he would take care of him more than everybody else. And there's a story. The Rebbe was maftiach to this person while he was alive that he will be able to be misharis at the end of his days. When I came there, I saw everything that was happening. I was scared from what I saw. And I right away said, take him from the chair, put him on the bed. And he motioned with his hand, and he was not masking to that. Afterwards, I saw, after an hour, approximately an hour, that his life was very, 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 he had very little chiyus in him. And he couldn't sit anymore on the chair. So I told everybody to move him onto the bed. And then he was quiet He didn't give any kind of indication, yes or no. And this person from Trovitz, this Talmud from Trovitz, put him on his arms. And he carried him to his bed, and he put him and he lied him down on the bed. And as he was lying on the bed, I grabbed his hand into my hand, like people who give shalom to each other, and I hugged his hand in a way of connection. And he lied in his bed, and he was sitting in his clothing, and he was wearing his clothing, but a silk clothing. And he told Reb Shimon to clothe him, to dress him beautifully. He told him to close the cuffs of the arbel across him with the buttons or the cufflinks of Asakain, and that's what he did. And his undergarment was sticking out above his overgarment, more than necessary. And the Rebbe told him, put it in, make me nice, that it shouldn't be sticking out. And he told us to wash his beard. Because there was still a little blood from his coughing, and they washed it nice. And he lied on his bed in freedom. And he took a little ball of wax. And he was moving it between his fingers. And he was thinking tremendous machshavas, like great people do. That when they're thinking about something, they use a ball of wax between their fingers, helps them think. And the Rebbe was ruggled with this. It was a habit of his towards the end of his life. And even the last day of his life, and the last hour, his mind was asuk, was busy with what it was busy with. And with his fingers, he was moving something with tremendous freedom, in a wondrous clarity and cleansing that was not seen ever. They gave him a little bit of soup or right of his sauce to eat. And he made a bracha, and he washed his hands and made a bracha. And after an hour, they gave him again some sauce, and he wasn't able to eat it. And this continued for the next 3 hours until he was nigva, till he departed. And while he was still lying on his bed, this is after he passed away. And there was a loud rash in the ear. What happened? There was a fire on the next street next to his house. There was a tremendous wind or hurricane that happened at the same time that wasn't normal. Wind that was breaking winds and breaking rocks. And the sukkah that was built next to the Rebbe's house fell down from this big wind. And while this wind was happening, the fire broke out. And most of the people ran to the fire. And I didn't know what to do. I am not leaving the Rebbe. No matter what happens. The Rebbe wasn't nifty yet. He was just in the bed on this place. And Reb Nosson said, I ran just to see what was happening, because he thought to himself that at this time the Rebbe will definitely not be mistake. And while I ran there, the Eibishter had Rachmanis, and the fire subdued in a tremendous miracle. As I was running to the place of the fire, they were making me that Baruch Hashem, the fire subdued. And I came back to him and I stood by his bed. And it was full of people from Klal Yisrael that came to be mechaber the Rebbe. When they saw it was getting close to the end, they started saying the psukim of Mavi Yavik that said on Tzadikim. Nidma shenigva v'izchalti livkos v'litzek ma'oy Rebbe Ami azavta my son, and it seemed like he died, and I started crying and screaming, Rebbe, who are you leaving us to? V'shama koilenu, and he heard our voice v'nisayra, and he woke up. V'herzer roishoy upanav anoram elenu, and he moved his head and his face towards us, as if he was saying, Eini oizev eschem chas v'shalom, I am not leaving you chas v'shalom. And then it didn't take long. Vayigva vayosef alamav b'kedusha u'b'tahara gedola, and the Rebbe died, and he vayosef alamav, like it says in the psukim, b'kedusha, in holiness and tremendous purity, naki v'zach b'lishim bilbil klal, in such a way of clarity there was no confusion at all. B'lishim tenua meshuna, without any kind of motion that would be different. B'yishav adas niflu b'noida. He died with tremendous yishav adas. V'chol ha'im sham roiv anshe chabura kedoshim chol g'dola shemashim. Ha'oizkim is a kulam amru shekvar ro kama shemesim b'nekiyus u'b'das. And all the people that were standing, and even the Cherem Kedisha, and all the people who were Meshamish said they saw many people pass away with Nekiyas and Das. Histalkus Gazette, to see this kind of Histalkus, they never saw something like it. That was all the way we understood it. But be'etzem, his Histalkus, we don't have a mouth to be able to talk about it, because not even a thought, there's not even a machshava in the world that can understand what was happening. And anyone who understands a little bit of the greatness of the Rebbe through his stories and his sichos and his Torah that we heard from him, understands that it's impossible to talk about such a kind of Histalkus, a wondrous Histalkus and a chiddush that was never seen like that. That wasn't like this, and what like his, and won't be like his. Like he said, beferish, and it was brought in a different place. But what should we say? How do we answer to the Eibush? They merited to be at the time that his neshama left him, his holy neshama left him. If I was only born to come to see this, it would be enough. And of course, afterwards became a Kol Rash Godel, and we screamed, Ona B'koyach, and there was tremendous weeping and crying. There was no woman in the house from the time of the Rebbe's Histalkus until they took him out to Kfur. You don't see that by any person, that no woman cried on him. And his wife didn't have the courage to come into the room to cry for him. This was the Rebbe's second wife. She didn't really have a connection with him at all, but she cried in her room. And as soon as his neshama went out, they started taking off his clothing while there was the screaming of tears. Reb Shimon was in his days right away, and he took the key, and he opened the chest, and he took out all the ksavim that he didn't give us. And there was some small kuntresim and svarim. He took everything, all of them, and he went to the other room where there was an oven, to burn them like the Rebbe told him earlier. And I also went with him with a bitter soul and with tears and wailing. I went to merit to at least breathe in the air of the smoke of his Torah that was being burned. That the generation was not zeicha to merit. Woe is to us what we lost with our averes. And after Reb Shimon threw it into the fire, into the oven, I went back to the Rebbe in his room. He was already lying on the ground. While I was in the other room, they put him on the ground, and he saw his face was revealed, and he was like smiling. And the beauty, the wonder of the beauty of his, and cleansing of his face that was seen at that time, exactly the way he looked, the beauty of his face while he was alive, when he would go in his house from one side to the other and think what he would think. Because on him was every type of chen, emes a chen from all the worlds. And this chen, this wondrous, beautiful chen, even when he was lying in the ground without life, I still saw that beautiful chen. And I cannot describe it. Only one, someone who saw him while he was alive at this time. When he would walk in deep in thought in his machshava and walk in his house. And the Rebbe was nostalgic on Tuesday, Revi the Sukkot, 4th day of Sukkot, Chai Tishrei, Tov Kufayin Aleph, 18th day of Tishrei, in the year 1810 or 5571. The Prat Koton, Acha Chatzois Hayoim, Eze Shois, after Chatzois Hayoim, a few hours, Vanim Lo Yotzisi Bezoros, she would see always the Kfura Miyad, and I didn't want that they should take him right away to Kfura. To bury him. Because it was hard for me to separate from him. It's brought in Shulchan Aruch. And Shulchan Aruch it's brought that on your father and your Rebbe, it's not the Zurz, is not Meshubach to get him right away into the ground. But it's Galgal. So we said it was Nesgalgal that he was still sitting there and lying there until nighttime. And everybody said, and everybody said, you don't take another gadol at night. And the levaya was held up till the next day, which was Yom Revi. And everybody was commanded to go to the mikveh, to the toivel. And after we davened, we were Isaac with him. And he was clean and cleansed. And there was no smell. The Eibishter made that there was good smell coming from him. And everybody asked us how to be misnaig with him, how to conduct ourselves with him. Whatever I will say, that's what they're going to do. So I said, to do the same thing that with him, like we do with every other person. I understood that that's the Ratzon of the Rebbe. They also asked, should we be the ones to be matapel with the Rebbe? And I said, not you, but the Chevra Kadisha, the people who are always taking care of this, they should be the ones taking care of it. Because I knew in my soul, according to his greatness, there is no one in the world that is robed to be able to take care of him. Because of his greatness, that's where we find his humbleness. And his ratzon, his will was that everybody should do what is appropriate to him. And the people who always take care of the Chevra Kadisha, that take care of the Mason, they should be the ones that take care of him, and it'll be a schus for them forever. Before they started being misasik with him while he was still on the ground, I was bezrizes, and I didn't daven. I didn't say halal. I didn't say I didn't bench Lulav and Esek. I went into his room, and I sit with him on the ground. And I sat with him. And I told him things that I wasn't able to tell him while he was alive. And I didn't have the chance to tell him all this. So I said, now I will say it in front of him. And then I cried a lot. I cried a lot while he was sitting while I was sitting on the ground next to him. Then other people came all over and they stood by him. They cried with me. But there was no one on the ground that was crying with him except for me. Because my eyes of my soul were mourning more than any people in the city. Because he was already made alive. He said, I know about him more than anybody. Afterwards, they started being masasik with him. They made his tahara. I didn't want to look at him, and I turned around because you don't look at your Rebbe while he's being washed. And when they started putting on the tachrichim, I stood there. It was so beautiful. The MS was that it was so beautiful. And I don't know what that is, but I guess it was part of the Tachrichem. Ashrei ayin rasa. Praised is the eye that saw this. He was lying on the table, in his talis, with fear, yira, kemuvan leilach, to go and elevate to the place that he needed to elevate. Praised is the body that was not enjoying from this world, not even like a hairline. Praised are the eyes that had no look at this world. The whole world was like a blink of an eye tip. Praised are the ears that didn't hear any sound in the world. And all his bones and senses like it's brought in the Maisa, in Spur Maisa, in the 13th Maisa, the Maisa of the 7 Betlers, Ein Sham Heite Ve'Haven. Look there and understand. Kiloi Kidmoy, Adam Ba'olam, the Sapin Shvachim Ke'ela, Ashum Tzadik. Nobody, there was no person in the world that said praises on any tzaddik. And if he was able to say all these praises about tzaddikim that it's brought in the story, he must have been holding it. And if you're going to open your hearts to look into that story with a real eye, you'll be able to understand a little bit of the great holiness that was bigger than any kind of holiness. Ashrei Loi, praise this him. And they took him out of his house. I held on to the knaf, to the edge of his beggar, while they were taking him out of the house. And something came into my mind. Something about the greatness of Hashem, according to my heart's ability to understand. I can't even describe this even to myself. Like it's brought down. They put him on the bed, and I told him to make the bed from his chair. That he said Torah that year, Rosh Hashanah in Oman. The last time he said Torah in Oman on Rosh Hashanah. His chair was very high. And I told him to break it up. They broke it up and they made from it a bed. And they carried him on that. I love him, and they will love him. Many people, thousands of people. And there was tremendous pushing. That the people who were carrying the bed were lifted off the ground. They were flying in the air. And I also carried him a little bit. But Nikbar b'Shalom, and he was buried in peace. B'Yom Revi on Wednesday. Chamishi the Sukkot b'Oman, on the 5th day of Sukkot in Oman. The city that he chose while he was alive, to be buried there. Like we heard from his holy mouth many, many times. He said in front of many people, that he wanted to be buried in this place because there were many, many holy kedoshim known that were buried in this place. As we know, the 30,000 people that died al kiddush Hashem like it's brought in a different place in Chaim Moharan. That's the main reason he came to Oman. Histalkus, a half a year before he was Nistalik. Hashem helped him, and the will of the ones who fear him, Hashem does. And he came in peace. And he was put to rest in peace. Because that was the place that was Moharan prepared for him from the Mishesh Mebereshis. Lasai Sham B'Tikkun Adam L'Doros the Chol Misha Yavayal of the Sham the Yoima Asara Kapitel Tehillim. For anyone who will come there and say the Tankabit Tehillim, this was a place that was prepared for Mishesh Mebereshis, that he should be able to do the Tikkun Olam for generations. To anyone who will come to that place and say the Tankabit Tehillim, Hayuduim Etzleinu, that are known by us, the Tikkun Haklali Kashev Tiach B'Chaim Chiyus, like he promised while he was alive. Ashrei Hazoicha Lazeh, praised is the person who merited this. This concludes Reb Nosson's description of the story of the Rebbe's Histalkus, almost a detailed description of the last few days of the Heilige Rebbe's life. And Reb Nosson concludes the story by saying that the Rebbe chose this place that was chosen for him in the Sheshimei Bereshis, and that he was maftiach and promised that anyone who will come to his kever and say these 10 Gebet L'Chtelim, he'll be able to do the tikkun, not just the tikkun for the person individual, but the individual tikkun will be a tikkun for the whole world. So all the people who were zeicha to come say the 10 Gebet L'Chtelim by the Heilige Rebbe's kever, and all the people that will come, is all bringing tikkun ha'olam and Mashiach Tzidkenu and Hera Yonei.